Our president holds the ultimate public trust. When he betrays that trust and puts himself before country, he endangers the Constitution, he endangers our democracy, and he endangers our national security.
Moments ago, House Democrats unveiled 2 articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. The first, abuse of power for asking Ukraine to investigate his political opponent, Joe Biden. The second, obstruction of Congress for, according to Democrats, concealing evidence. So this sets the stage for an impeachment vote in the House and then a trial in the Senate.
Yeah, with more on what happens from here, Brandy Cruz joined in studio this morning by our legal analyst, John McKay. Brandy, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. John, thanks for being here. As a former U.S. attorney, I imagine this drives you crazy. You are a guy of the law, facts, evidence. Here you have members of Congress presented with the exact same set of information, and they feel so differently about it. Does that drive you nuts?
Well, you know, it makes for interesting viewing
Right.
for the most part, but that was baked into our Constitution, that this was a legal process and a constitutional process, but it was also a political process. Our founders didn't turn this process over to a special judge or special prosecutor, but he turned the decision of whether impeachment articles would be brought to the House of Representatives with a trial in the Senate. So it's in a way, it's inherently political, but grounded in the Constitution. So we hope that it's more grounded than political, but I think we may see otherwise.
Yeah, so 2 articles of impeachment unveiled by Democrats this morning. We just heard about them: abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. Some people were surprised that they didn't also fold in the Mueller probe and say, you know, Mueller had kind of been shaky on whether the president committed obstruction of justice, and the Democrats did not go there. Why do you think that is? Why did they leave the Mueller thing out of this?
If this were a purely criminal case, you would have seen probably as many as 8 counts lodged against this person, this defendant, the President of the United States. And they would have been much more detailed, some drawn from the Mueller report, some, for example, the emoluments clause, which we've heard about, which, remember, that is specifically in the Constitution and prohibits persons in power and the office of the presidency from profiting while in office. So this would deal with his hotels and golf courses. They left that out. And I think what they're trying to do is group what they consider to be the greatest offenses, which would be, of course, the claim that he abused our national security by trying to force Ukraine to announce an investigation and affect the 2020 election. That's number 1. Number 2, abuse of Congress. I mean, clearly the president has chosen not to cooperate. He's not the first president who's chosen not to cooperate with Congress in its investigations of the White House.
Yeah, obstruction of Congress. Moving forward for you, is it more important what the court of public opinion thinks about all of this, or is it more important what Congress thinks ultimately in a trial in the Senate?
Well, I mean, obviously the founders wanted this to be a political process. Members of the House and members of the Senate represent us, and yet that's a political process, and they wanted it to take place in the political arena. So I don't think anybody thinks that there will be a conviction in the Senate. Clearly, what the Democrats are attempting to do is lodge these issues and these complaints and the evidence, if they can, put it out before the public at the beginning of 2020, and let that be part of the election fodder for the elections later on in 2020.
You had mentioned, you know, the president and the accusation that he obstructed Congress, that he withheld information, that he didn't cooperate. If you were the president's legal counsel, would you suggest that he cooperate? Would you suggest that he participate in this process?
I think the legal process, the answer would be yes. He should cooperate. But, you know, most presidents have said, the White House isn't going to recognize that Congress can in fact run the executive branch. And so there's a tension in the Constitution. We see lots of tensions in the Constitution, and this is one of them. So I think it's normal for a president to push back. Here, what the members of the House are saying, and the House Judiciary Committee so far, they're saying he's gone over the line by instructing his own senior officials not to participate at all in the process. Normally, a compromise is sought. This president has had no compromise, and now he's facing a count of impeachment of obstructing Congress.
I want to play for you quickly something Adam Schiff said this morning, because Democrats, and you guys have heard this, they keep referring back to, you know, hearkening back to our founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution, and you hear them quote these well-known individuals very often. Listen to Adam Schiff here.
Ben Franklin said, "We have a republic if we can keep it." The president and his men say, you can't keep it, and Americans should just get over it.
It seems like Democrats are trying to appeal to patriotism. Who are they doing that for? Who are they doing that for when they talk about the framers of our Constitution, when they hearken back to the founders of our country?
I'd like to say they're trying to persuade some Republicans who might have enough integrity to go against their political party, but I think they're speaking to the American public and the political process that's baked into the Constitution. And they recognize, as those same founders did, that the ultimate decision is going to be made by the people, because it's clear that the Senate is not going to remove President Trump, and that the real issue is going to be whether these claims and the evidence associated with them, and really it's evidence that we're talking about, whether that's going to be enough to sway the public and to defeat Donald Trump when he runs for re-election in 2020.
So it seems like a foregone conclusion that the House is going to impeach the president.
It
This
does.
will move forward to a trial. If that happens, and when that happens, President Trump would become the third U.S. president in history to ever be impeached. Nixon would have been the fourth, but he resigned before that could happen. You were around for Clinton. Compare what's happening right now to your recollection of how this unfolded back then in terms of the way it's being perceived by the American populace.
Well, there's a lot of similarities, and people are noticing that the decisions seem to be made along purely political lines. Republicans are voting one way, Democrats are voting another, and that's really how Clinton unfolded. The difference, I think, is in the nature of the allegations. In Clinton, you had an allegation of a personal, private, sexual, moral judgment that was being made in even a constitutional court of impeachment. The difference here, I think, is that we're talking about misuse of governmental authority, imperiling our national security. These are the allegations: imperiling our national security for the personal gain of the President of the United States, that is his re-election. His election process is not part of the governmental process at all. That's a personal issue. And it's clear that the President was personally involved. He got on the telephone. He told the president of the Ukraine that he was holding up, that he was going to, his aid is effectively going to be held up. But what he said to him in the call was, "I want you to do me a favor."
Yeah, not denied by anyone, by the way.
That's
Everyone
right.
agrees to that.
Now he says that's a hoax, but that's a fact. And so the fact of the interest of national security is, I think, what distinguishes us between the Clinton impeachment and what seems to be the impeachment of President Trump.
All right, this is Racing Forward. John McKay, former United States attorney. We appreciate your time and your legal expertise, as always. Liz, back over to you.
Brandy, appreciate it. Thank you. 7:40 right now. Tomorrow,